Hello, everybody, and welcome to Red Wings Daily, presented to you by FanArch. I'm your host, Kirk MckNight, lifelong Red Wings fan and author of The Voices of Hockey Broadcasters Reflect on the Fastest Game on Earth, a book which is available on Audible or Apple Books in its new and updated audio edition. I'm coming to you from southwest corner of Washington State, tucked away back here in the Pacific Northwest. Really good viewership in yesterday's show, folks. Over at 2,500 when I woke up this morning. I'm sure it's a few hundred more than that by the time this show even airs. So thank you all. And subscriptions have gone up quite a bit as well, about 20 to 30 a day. It's my goal to be at about 2,000 by opening night. So maybe if those were up to about 50 a day, we might make that. So if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do so. Obviously, we saw a lot of action on the message board, and I'm always welcoming of that. A lot of people tune back in to see what others said about their comments later on. They get into a little bit of an argument or a little bit of back and forth. It can be friendly, unfriendly, but I welcome it all. Thank you all for basically participating in the show on a daily basis. We'll start today's show by doing deadline news. Now, of course, that's a little high concept. Deadline, headline, right? But the reason I call it deadline is more like that it's beating a dead horse, right? I think we've been talking about Larkin's trade request and this search for a new GM all summer. We have. I mean, it's getting to be where kids are back in school again, and we're still talking about what's going to happen with Dylan Larkin when pretty much they were just walking at graduation when he requested the trade. So it's been a long summer of just reiterating storylines. But I want to bring up an article and something that was written by Inside the Rink's Alexander de Berardinis. He wrote, "The future of this team revolves around whatever the solution to the Larkin problem is. If Dylan Larkin stays or a similar player is brought back in return, then it's time to use draft picks and prospects to make this team into one that can compete for a cup around this core. If the return is based around futures, then selling off Justin Falk, Andrew Kopp, and John Gibson should be pursued aggressively. Either way, the team needs to pick a clear direction." Then he goes on to write, "I can get over Larkin being on this team as long as the right infrastructure is around Dylan Larkin, Lucas Raymond, and Alex DeBrincat. Oh, and also make sure the captaincy is assigned to Sider." I was a little reluctant to agree with the basically selling off Justin Falk, Andrew Kopp, and John Gibson. Basically, only one of those players I was reluctant about. I like Andrew Kopp. I feel like he has stepped up, but the reality is, if Larkin's not around, he's probably going to be our number one center. And is he number one center type material? No, really not. So I need to be a little less reluctant and kind of willing to let go of that, because if we're looking long term, we are going to need, and if Larkin's not going to be around, we are going to need somebody who can take that mantle, and you can see taking that mantle of being our number one center for an extended period of time. So I'm fine with Gibson and Falk being sold off. Do not get me wrong on that. Those two can go. I don't have much attachment to either of them. Tarasov can step up into the number one, or we find another goaltender that steps into the number one. We have Postava down in Grand Rapids, who we've given a lot of action to. What's even almost, you think about, we just vet Kosa all that time and then just trade him so we can get a 23rd pick in the first round. It just seems baffling to me that that's what would happen to that. But I'm a little bit more, I have a little bit more closure about that by the fact that Postava was the one seeing a lot of the action in the playoffs. So we have a playoff ready kind of goaltender to step up into that role if we sell off somebody like Gibson in the meantime and Tarasov doesn't pan out for us as our number one. So I do see a lot of value in what de Berardinis is saying in this article. He himself is not really keen on Larkin sticking around, but he is also a Red Wings fan, and he basically is accepting the reality if that is what's going to happen. Then if that does happen, then we build around this. If the friction between Yzerman and Larkin is basically taking a back seat and he comes in here to the number one, he's already got a hurdle to jump over and basically winning back the confidence and trust and camaraderie of his teammates who basically saw him make a stink, and he's going to show up with egg on his face if he doesn't go anywhere else in this offseason. It's dwindling down to basically one team as a possibility, and we don't even know if that is even a realistic possibility as it is, as far as Minnesota taking on Larkin and giving us what we want in return. So I like a lot of the points made in here, and I definitely agree with the point of if Mo Sider becomes the captain, I'd be all in favor of that. And I think I've kind of gone from my favorite player of Raymond to really the best fit for the team with the C on his jersey, and that would be Mo Sider. I think he's definitely able to step into that role. So going over to fan mail, yesterday, Feed J Pie wrote, Chris Illich asking Yzerman the analytics thing specifically to embarrass him speaks volumes. Stevie may need work, but doesn't deserve all the heat. Behind the scenes, we've got an completely inept and greedy owner. Nothing will improve, and we will see in time. He was handicapped by a son who fell very, very far from the tree. I bring this up because there's 3 teams over 2 sports that I come to mind right now with this. Okay, we see what happens when the son takes over from the father. We have 3 different examples of this, but one of them is really the opposite of the other 2. So I'm talking about the Steinbrenners in baseball, Illich's in hockey and baseball, but also Rocky Wirtz taking over from Bill. Okay, I think a lot of the sentiment that is expressed towards Chris Illich was what people were saying about Bill Wirtz back in the days in the early 2000s when he owned the team. Okay, people didn't have access to the games on TV. There was a lot of things that weren't happening. People were not, ownership was not spending on the Blackhawks. They were selling off. There was a lot of just revolving doors in Chicago. Rocky takes over, puts the games back on. You got people back in the seats at the United Center, and you got a future dynasty, right? So that is kind of the situation where the son went a different direction from the father, but in a good way, and spent rather than withheld, right? And the Steinbrenners, I think, are the same situation over with the Yankees. I think that Hank and Hal, over time, I think, I can't remember which one passed away. I think Hank's the one that's passed away, and now Hal is part of pretty much the ownership and owns the team. But George spent a lot, right? George spent a lot, and it's not to say that the Yankees don't spend a lot. They're one of the top payrolls in all of baseball, but they're not making the right decisions. They're depending too much on Cashman. This is baseball. We don't want to wander too much in this, but we do see the reverse. It's kind of the mirror image. And when I say mirror image, it's the opposite of what's going on. So Illich's and Wirtz, it's definitely different, right? The son takes over and is not spending the money that the dad did. Whereas with Wirtz, the son is taking over and is spending the money that the dad didn't. So I would like to see more of Rocky than Bill as far as the Illiches go. As I would like Chris to exercise a little bit more of Rocky's way of approaching things than Bill's. And I feel like Rocky's way was a lot like Mike's way, right? So I do appreciate this comment, and it just makes me think, what would be the change if we were to see something like that happen? Instead of a son spending less money, a son spending more money. You see what happened to put Chicago on the map. They got Patrick Kane, Duncan Keith, Jonathan Toews, Corey Crawford, Joe Quenneville, and they made a dynasty. So we could possibly do that if we were to spend money. One other point I want to make by this is I know a lot of people are like, yeah, right, we can make a dynasty. And it happened before, folks. A lot of these discussions in lesser times back in the early 80s were going on about how the Red Wings were just dead in the water and going through just this abysmal period, okay? And then guess what happened? They became a dynasty, right? There's almost $20 million of cap space. The Red Wings have the highest amount of cap space of any team in the NHL. That should tell you right there that this dynamic, it is not Mike's way of doing things. This is Chris's way of doing things. Mike was working with no salary cap. We're having a salary cap here. Rocky dealt with the salary cap and was able to make the best of it, okay? So if Chris can spend a little more money and maybe not be so embarrassing for us to be a $19 million salary cap, like left that much space. That's a little embarrassing to be number one in the bad way as far as cap space in the league. I don't like that idea whatsoever. We see what this city is willing to spend on teams like the Tigers and then willing to dump off. This is the Red Wings. This is Hockey Town. There should be more of a propensity to spend on this team. So going back over a couple of our prospects, I mentioned the other day that Score Mobile had Cameron Butler as one of the players on the team. Left wing, right winger, 24 years old. This is basically, I think this is his first year playing with the Red Wings. in the Red Wings farm system. He's at Grand Rapids. He elite prospects. Well, he's 6'4". First of all, that's huge. Big size, big player. Not weighed too much or anything like that, but definitely size. So that means hopefully if he can skate, that he can be a presence and a speed. He's physical on the forecheck. This is what Elite Prospect says. He's physical on the forecheck, laying on the body and winning puck battles. Defensively, he's in position and collapses well into the slot of the net front to lift sticks and take any opportunities. He moves with players and doesn't get caught drifting out of the play. With the puck, he makes safe plays back to the D for breakouts. He's been in the Wilds and the Blue Jackets farm system over the last several years. He played a lot of time in the OHL, and then he's been basically up into the AHL, except for his most recent trip was back down to the ECHL. So Iowa Wild at the AHL, but then he jumped down to the Iowa something else. I can't even remember their names, like Thundercats or something maybe, but yeah, so his last action over there in that system was further down into the ECHL, so it's quite a jump. So it makes me a little surprised that they have him on Score Mobile as being part of the roster for the Red Wings right now. I do not see that happening opening night. I do not see him in there over somebody like MBN or even Bear, right? Bear's not listed in this Score Mobile app, and neither is MBN. Those two definitely, I would say, over this guy. But who knows? Maybe we'll find something out in training camp that has this guy looking at, a starting spot on the roster. But I highly doubt it. So I'm just kind of wondering where Score Mobile is coming up with this. If they're just throwing a dart at a board and saying, yeah, just throw them on there. We just got to program some names in. We got all this software and we don't know what we're doing with it. So today's Tuesday. And that brings us to Tantrum Tuesday. And so to close out the show, I want to go back to October 30th, 2003. This was in Bridgestone Arena, so I'll call it Fight Night at Bridgestone, between the Preds and the Red Wings. So the Predators and the Red Wings, back when Detroit was still in the Western Conference, we may not think of it much like San Jose, like St. Louis, and clearly like Colorado, but there was a little bit of a rivalry with the Nashville Predators, and I feel like this was definitely all-encompassing this night itself. Ken Daniels had it clocked at 9 fights. Watching this over on YouTube again, and the fights being displayed on the right-hand side, we had 8. So I think there may have been one in the skirmish that wasn't listed, but I'll say the others that were. So McCarty and Stevenson go at it 23 seconds into the game. That's a fight, and it was a rough fight. McCarty is just so fiery and just a fast thrower. He throws those punches super fast. And so he and Stevenson get into it. McCarty takes him down to the ice pretty quick. Then Fisher and Hartnell go after it. This was basically a revenge for Fisher on Hartnell, who gave him a pretty bad hit that took him out. And I think he had to recover and be on the, I don't know if he was on the IL or what, but he was out for a few games because of it. So that was kind of revenge, sweet revenge for Fisher. He went out with some pretty good tenacity. He put Hartnell right into the boards pretty hard. And there was pretty much a rink side view or rink wide view of this hit, and he put it to him pretty good. So that was another one. Kirk MckNight against Scott Walker. His name's Tutu, and then Dandino and Tutu went at it. And then Chelios went at it with Hall, and then Shanahan a little later than that with Hall. Third period became just fight after fight after fight. But if you're Hall right now, you've gone against 2 future Hall of Famers pretty much back-to-back in a period. So there was that as well. Dandino got back into it again, and Stevenson did, now this time with each other. So Dandino had fought with Tutu, was now fighting Stevenson, who had fought with McCarty. Well, McCarty wasn't going to be left out of the action as far as a 2-fight night goes, because he went after Allison, and that was pretty much to end the game. That last minute, basically it was 5-3, I think was the final score. Red Wings, it was 4-3. Red Wings trying to, with an extra skater there in that last minute. Nashville gets the goal. Once that game's pretty much out of reach for the Red Wings, it's become a 2-goal game. Then they start throwing the fists around a lot and going at it. So it was pretty good theater, pretty good time. It showed that these two teams were good rivals at one point early in the 2000s. I think there was a lot of fandom that kind of went up the way from Tennessee into Detroit. I think that the two communities were basically brought together by the automobile industry. They opened up a Nissan plant, I think, in Nashville which brought a lot of workers down from Detroit. So you get that little connection, you get that blue collar pipeline, is what Pete Weber talked about in the book in the Voices of Hockey. So pretty interesting night, 2003, gunning it up, a lot of fights. Apparently there were 9, but pretty interesting stuff. Well deserving of being on Tantrum Tuesday. This has been Red Wings Daily, folks, presented to you by FanArch. I'm your host, Kirk MckNight. Tomorrow we will talk about if there's been any movement. I think the GM search as far as using the analytics firm, I think it's 2 days underway right now. We'll see if we have any fruits borne up from it. In the meantime, LGRW from the PNW.